Hey everybody! Today Rahdo runs through his top 10 games that really need a reprint. Although, kind of, sort of. Actually, the topic was chosen, as always, by my block of Rahdo Runs Through voters, and the original intent for this was, right, this is going to be an easy one to make. I just go through a list of all my favorite games, find the ones that are out of print, and list them for you. And I actually even started recording that, but honestly, it didn't really strike me as a particularly interesting list. I mean, particularly since so many of them are probably never going to get reprinted, unfortunately. And yeah, I wasn't really saying anything about the game or, other than saying, oh man, I'm really sorry that you can't have a copy of it. It just was just kind of like a long, drawn-out tease. And so I figured, let's try and come up with something different. And so what I really started thinking about is, these days it's so common that you see these really awesome deluxe reprints of games come out where they completely pimp out all the components and redo all the art and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, that's awesome. So I'm actually changing this to top 10 games that want a deluxe reprint, a deluxeification of it. And so these are all games that I like quite a bit, but yeah, they could use a little bit of extra zazz, if you know what I mean. So I'm just going to run through them. Although, before I get to the 10, I had a couple of ideas that I thought were so awesome, and they're silly. They are silly suggestions, and I know they're not even remotely practical, so I couldn't put them on the list, but I just wanted to throw it out there anyway. So here's my honorary number 12. I want to see another reprint of Tash Kalar. Of course, Tash Kalar's already had one reprint. It was originally put out by Z-Man, it was okay, but then the CGE, they got the rights back for it and reprinted it, and it was much nicer, and that's the one we actually play. But I want to see a third reprint for this that introduces holograms, basically. I want to see the R2-D2 versus Chewbacca chess hologram game on the Millennium Falcon version of this, because what I've always loved about Tash Kalar is while on the surface it looks like just this really dry abstract game of putting discs on the board and trying to make patterns and whatnot, that's not really what's happening. This is the only dueling wizard game Jen and I own and actually enjoy. Because what you're supposed to imagine as you're playing is, as you put out the patterns so that you can summon the essence of this archangel or this phoenix or what, or this turret or whatever it might be. You're supposed to imagine the spirit of these things kind of coming to life, growing up out of the discs that you've placed on the board, and then, unleashing rampant destruction. Kind of like, summoning a creature in a Final Fantasy game or something like that, and then it just disappears. Of course, you have to use your imagination here, and I think it's a real shame that a lot of people don't use their imagination and just dismiss this as a dry, boring, themeless game, when in fact, it's very thematically grounded. And so, I think we need a hologram version, because tabletop holograms, those are coming. There was actually a fairly successful one on Kickstarter last year. Raised $250,000, I think, or something like that. So somewhere down the road, when technology makes it possible, I want to see my Tash Kalar board still physically on the board, me still touching the things, physically manipulating stuff. But once it's in position and I play the card, I want to see an optical digitizer recognize the symbol and superimpose over the board what actually happens as we summon these mighty spirits and destroy things. It'd be so awesome. Like I said, not really a practical one, but I just had to mention it. Let's talk about another completely impractical one before we get to the real list. Man, Bomb Squad, although this also would apply for Mechs vs. Minions, or really any kind of game where players program the actions of robots that are going to run around on board. I want to see a version of this that has a little tiny, automated robot. It's interesting, Bomb Squad, which is a real-time cooperative game, already has an app you can download that you use for a timer to make sound effects and stuff like that. I want to see an updated version of that app that when we actually say, run the program, because we're spending time, playing cards and running a program that will determine what our bomb diffusal robot will do. Actually, I point the camera's camera at it, it detects it, and then via Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or whatever, sends the the orders out so that our bomb defusal robot actually physically moves around on the board. And when it gets to a spot where it's supposed to disarm a bomb or open a door, it'll stop, it'll beep, and I'll look at the screen and say, yes, you can move forward because we programmed you incorrectly, or no, you have to stop. Something like that would be so cool just to see this thing come alive. I mean, I've actually seen at conventions the real life equivalent of this with Robo Rally, where players are actually programming real robots, kind of like BattleBot size. And again, not even remotely practical. I know I'm being silly, but man, I would love to see a reprint of Bomb Squad or any programming game where you're actually programming a real robot that actually ran around on the board. That'd be so cool. But okay, silliness aside, let's actually talk about a real list now of big deluxe reprints I'd love to see someday, starting with number 10. Although I'll be honest, this is still a little bit on the silly side, but I can dream, can't I, for a deluxe reprint of Dungeon Petz. And I'll tell you what I want to see here, folks. If you've ever seen the deluxe reprints of like Takenoko or something like that, these games, or Takedo for that matter, where what was it, a really simple little game got these insanely deluxe makeovers with cool little miniatures. Dungeon Petz, of course, is famous for its really, it already looks gorgeous. I mean, this is a deluxe version compared to a lot of board games that are already on the market. But what I want to see is, I don't want to see just little cardboard cutout of art of the Dungeon Petz that we are raising in this Pet Shot simulator. I want actual world minis of these creatures. Because a big part of this game is about getting emotionally attached and involved with these things that you have to care for and you have to feed and play with and stuff like that. I want to see them as actually real 3D characters. And I don't want my personal Pet Shop board to be just this flat piece of cardboard that I put the pets on. I want it to actually, kind of be a 3D thing where the individual pens for the pets are like these sunken things that we actually put the pet in. And when we upgrade the cages, you just put this little piece of cardboard around the edge so you can see what type of cage it is. And you put your little imps on there so that they can play with the pets and stuff like that. But I want to see, I think the original game, what is it? I want to say it came with like 18 pets originally. And I know that's not nothing to actually make gorgeous little, ideally pre-painted miniatures of all these 18 pets, plus all the ones that have come out with promos and expansions. But man, that would be so awesome. And I've seen other games that get that kind of loving treatment. I'm not saying this ever will, so I'm still kind of on the silly side. As I go further, I'll be more and more serious. In fact, actually, this is the last silly thing. But it is my number 10. I would love to see a deluxe reprint of Dungeon Petz. Now, on to number 9. This one is on my list because of pure jealousy. I would love to see a deluxe reprint of Nations because, what was it, last year, I think? Through the Ages, which is the preeminent big, epic, Euro-style civilization builder, got its 10th year reprint. And the reprint, completely redid all the art, upgraded all the components and whatnot. And the thing is, Through the Ages is a brilliant game. It certainly deserves its place in the pantheon of board game geeks in the top 10 and all that. I thought it was a very impressive game, but Nations is the game for me and Jen. It's so much better for our personal taste. And now that Through the Ages has gotten its big, super overhaul, all I can do is just look on with despair. Nations is a good production. It's got quality and components and whatnot, but I don't think anybody can deny that the art is okay at best. And I want the art in this game to look as good as the art in Elysium or something like that, because it really deserves it, because this game is so absolutely brilliant. But here's the thing, if Through the Ages got its big reprint, I think it was as a result of its 10th year anniversary, we're gonna have to wait till 2023 before we finally get a deluxe reprint of Nations, which makes me sad, but I will wait patiently, and in the meantime, I will continue to enjoy. But that would be my number 9 for deluxe reprint Nations. Now, my number 8, this is the only game I don't actually have. And in fact, it's out of print, so this one might actually be on my list of, man, I just wish it would get a reprint in general. Some of these games are hard to get, some of them are easy to get. Like I said, I'm talking about deluxe reprints I want. And the next one on my list, number 8, would be for a game called Urbion. Now, Urbion is part of the Oniverse, which is Onerim, Castellion, Sylvian, and I don't have it yet, but there's a new one that came out last year that has a submarine, Nauticus, I think, or Nautilian, I think. So these are all from the same designer, Shady Torby, and they're all set in this same kind of dream-like universe. They're all very, very clever solo/two-player cooperative games. We've enjoyed them all, and every other game put out by Shady in this series has had these really gorgeous, wonderful productions that are delight. They bring this kind of weird, surreal dreamscape to life, but even opening these boxes is a treat because they are some of the best packaging I've ever seen. They tell a story when you lift this lid. So much so that when I've done run-throughs for these, I haven't actually wanted to show that because it robs some of the joy. So at one point, early on, his original version of Owner Room was in a tiny little box. It was just the cards. And Z-Man had not started doing all these deluxe versions of his games. Urbion came out and it was printed like that. And I would love to see it sit on my shelf along with all its other ones, including Nautilian, which I don't have yet. So I want to see a big, fancy, upgraded version of that come out. I worry that it won't, because I did read somewhere on Board Game Geek that now that Z-Man has been bought out, that there's new heads of departments and whatnot, and it doesn't quite have as much, the new powers that be within Z-Man don't necessarily have the same enthusiasm for the Oniverse. So we may never get to see Urbion get its proper reprint with the same wonderful production, but I really hope it does, so I can have the complete collection up on my shelf. So that was number 8, Urbion. Now, number 7. This is a really neat little game. I've already done a run-through for it. It is Aya, or Aya? I don't know. But this is a real-time cooperative domino stacking game. Or, not domino stacking, but, placing dominoes, and so that by the time runs out, you can tip one of the dominoes and then they'll all fall like dominoes. Like what kids do with dominoes. You set them up, you move them all, and this is a really, really nice game. Jen and I very much enjoyed it a lot. My only problem with it is, it doesn't actually come with real dominoes. It comes with these things that are domino shaped, but they're made out of wood. And when everything else is done and you're ready at the end of the game to tip the first one so that they'll all start falling like dominoes, it works, it's great, it's very satisfying, but in the back of my head I'm always thinking, man, I wish these were real dominoes. Made from that same, I don't know what it is, ceramic material that real dominoes are made of instead of just like kind of lightweight wood. It would be such a huge improvement, and it would really, in the same way Splendor is this neat little filler game that just people are absolutely gaga for, and I've always suspected in part that's because it has these wonderful, thick poker chips that are just a delight to hold. I want Aya to get a reprint, a deluxe reprint that has dominoes that are that nice. So they're just a tactile delight to hold on to, and so that when you finally get to the end and you let the dominoes fall where they may, it'll be so much more satisfying. It'll have that great domino sound, that clack, 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 instead of just the little wooden things. Don't get me wrong, these are fine. I mean, this is a game we've held on to, but I would love to see a deluxe, actual domino version of Aya. So that was number 7. Then we're on to number 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Yep, number 6. Okay, this is from designer Albin Viard. It's called Clinic. And if you'll notice right off the bat, well, first of all, is a thanks from Albin to me for covering the game. Albin, he's a great guy. Met him at Essen. This is a very, very cool hospital simulation, where I'm trying to run the best hospital clinic I can, you're trying to run the best hospital clinic you can. We have to meet the needs of patients, but we also have to meet the needs of our staff, and we're trying to build outward, but also upward. There's a lot of really cool stuff in this game, but this was Albin, this was like his first, he has traditionally been this little independent guy who has self-published all his games, and they have really kind of low production value. And I mean, you can see this is the official box. It's just a boring blank piece of cardboard with a sticker on it. And the actual components inside are not that much better. Super duper thin tiles, and I mean, this whole game could really stand for a big, because it's a brilliant game. It's incredibly deep, rich, thinky, meaty game. And I would love to see it get a wonderful deluxe spread. And one of the things that could be really cool about this is, like I mentioned, you're laying tiles to build up your clinic, your hospital, and putting in different departments and whatnot. But in addition to spreading them out, you can also spread to the second and third floor, and that's represented on your player board by just having here's your first floor, here's your second floor, here's your third floor. And you have to kind of imagine the connection between the first and the second, because it's important where you put buildings on the second floor. You can't have them floating in space. They have to be built on top of rooms on the first floor and stuff like that. So if this were to ever get a deluxe reprint with really nice high quality components and a real proper box, I would love the board to actually be 3D as well. That, you've got your ground floor, but then you have like a little bit of a scaffolding thing so you can put your first and your second floor, and you can actually see them build upwards as you go. I think that, Clinic is a great game. It deserves a wonderful reprint like that. And that's why was my number 7, Clinic. Then on to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. No, that was my number 5, right? Because 10, 9, 8, 7. No, okay, 6, 5, 4, 3. I've totally lost track. Normally I have a little list right there. And I thought, I'm a big boy. I don't have to worry about my list. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. You know what, folks? I'm going to be right back. Okay. It was right here. Here's where my little stack is of all but somehow this one ended up right here. My number 5, totally missed it, totally threw me off, but enough of my Rahdo goofs. I can't even get a top 10 right before making goofs. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about my number 5 game that really deserves a deluxe reprint. Paperclip Railways, from designer Tony Boydell, who has since gone on to the greatness of Snowdonia and Guilds of London. This is a much earlier design that he made, and it's an absolutely charming delight of a game where you are building railway lines out of paper clips. And I've done a run through for it, so you can actually check out the video and see that this is an incredibly, much like Clinic, it's really just a completely nondescript box, nothing fancy about it. The only high quality component of this is the paper clips themselves. Everything else about it is just kind of very, very low rent clip art style presentation and whatnot. But the gameplay itself is so clever and funny. The game has a really wicked sense of humor to it. The railway game where the trains are stationary. You get it? Stationary. It so deserves, and these days, Tony Boydell, after Guilds of London, which was very, very well received, and Snowdonia before it, I would think he would have enough heat. There'd be enough people excited about Tony Boydell joint that, some publisher could talk to Tony about, hey, we'd like to revisit that because we've heard Rahdo ramble on about how great it is. Let's give it a try because, again, it's a wonderful game. I've held on to my really, really low-rent original produced copy, but I really do think this deserves to have a nice, high-end, well-produced deluxe version of Paperclip Railways. That was my number 5. Now, on to my number 4. Expedition Sumatra, Dadu. And, I feel bad even talking about this because, this is one of 200 copies of this in the world. This is an incredibly hard game to get your hands on. It's interesting. The publisher, Igramoon, they printed this, and then a year or two later, they implemented the game into, what was it called? Los Incognitos. It's the same basic idea. This is a real, you can check out my run-through of Los Incognitos. This is the prequel to it, where basically you're kind of Yahtzee style, but not really. It's a really clever twist on Yahtzee style Euro resource management games. You're rolling dice in this game to give you the movement you need to be able to go on expeditions, to either by land or by sea, to basically go out and find wildlife. Not to capture them or kill them, but just to take pictures. You're a Richard Attenborough. In this game, not Richard Attenborough, you're David Attenborough in this game, trying to run expeditions to find all this wonderful wildlife. And it's driven by dice. And this is a very hard game to get. It was great that the publisher effectively made this more widely available with Los Incognitos. But the problem was, this was, for my money, a much cooler theme of, going on real-world expeditions, being a David Attenborough, trying to make your own nature show. The reprint became this weird time travel, wacky aliens, almost Toe Jam and Earl kind of setting that just just seemed a little odd, a little goofy, whereas this feels kind of grounded and I think is a more interesting fantasy fulfillment. And the other thing about Los Incognitos, it came in this crazy big box that was just very non-standard and didn't really fit on shelves very well. So ultimately I had both and I got rid of Incognitos, even though they were both very good games, because, well, one, this is much, much smaller. It's much more travel friendly and we just really like the theme more. But the thing is, I'll be honest, I am not really a fan of the wooden box. I would love for this to, keep the same form factor, but just get a really nice reprint, maybe with updated art, updated dice. The fundamental system of how there's a piece of plexiglass in here that you use to write on the maps, I don't even know if that's necessary because I've played games where you can just write directly on the board itself with dry erase markers. I think this could be. This is a sweet, wonderful little game, and if somebody were to approach the publisher, Igramoon, to give it wider distribution, this could be repackaged and be a pretty hot little item. I would love to get a better version because I just don't like looking at wood on my wall. I'd rather this be a nice piece of cardboard box with lovely art on the side of it. Don't get me wrong, I'm not getting rid of it because I love it, but man, it could really use a little bit of a deluxe makeover for Expedition Sumatra Dadu. That was number 4. On to number 3. Now, this one's a bit odd because all these other ones I've been talking about, yeah, I'd love to see it reprinted and how I would love to see it improved, what kind of new components, what kind of, how that would change the game or whatever. Although really, for the purposes of this, actually, that's another thing I should have mentioned right up front. A lot of times these reprints they are also an opportunity to reinvent the wheel of the game, to kind of do a 2.0 version of it. I'm not suggesting that for any of these games. I think all these games work great as they are. I just want deluxe reprints that just pimp them out and give them a production that is worthy of their gameplay. Actually, it would be kind of interesting, come to think of it, to maybe do a list of games that deserve a 2.0. Games that deserve to be re-implemented. Because when I was making this list, I was dismissing those. I figured, okay, I'm only going to focus on the deluxe stuff. Another thing I dismissed a lot of was games that could be rethemed. I had several that I'd love to retheme. I would love to get them reprinted, and they'd get a deluxe thing, but the theme would have to change so they'd become more better, in my opinion. Anyway. Sorry, that's totally as an aside. I'm coming back to my number 3. And the reason Kashgar, Handler der Seidenstrasse, is on my board is I don't think you need to change anything about this. It already had a pretty nice production anyway, because this is traveling the Silk Road, getting goods and converting them into victory points kind of thing. And I already liked how the game didn't just use cubes for your donkeys. It actually has like a little donkey meeple in it and little spice meeples and whatnot. This is already a pretty good production. I really don't feel the need to enhance or improvement. Here's only one reason I want to see this reprinted. English, bitte! English, please! I want to see a proper English version of this. And not only just Kashgar, but all of Gerhard Hex. He's put out, I believe, 3 games that all are different takes on the multiple deck builder that he has developed here with Kashgar. What were the other ones? They were Jaeger and Speyer and Chata and Thorn. All 3 of these games are only available auf Deutsch. And I just want to see them reprinted in English. Please, Cosmos Dames, hear my cry. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I very much enjoyed this because I basically have kind of sort of a bootleg version of it. I talk about that when I did the run-through for it, but man, this deserves to get an English printing so much. And yeah, while you're at it, deluxify it even more if you want, but I just want a deluxe version that I can read. That was my number 3, Kashgar, Merchants of the Silk Road. And now, number 2. Oh, such a sweetum. I really adore Adventure of D. But you know what? If you just look at the art right there, I think that'll give you a pretty good idea of why this thing could use an update. This is a very, very sharp game. You can check out my run-through to see why. But it's it's a fantasy adventure card game. Or there's something about I forget. They had a really clever thing about how a big adventure in a small box. There it is. Why isn't that on the cover? I mean, well, it's self-evident. There's a lot of replay. This game is really, really clever. It's basically just a deck of cards, but they're multi-use cards. The cards represent terrain. They represent creatures. They represent random number generators. They represent items. It's such a clever game, and I think this could really make a lot of people very, very happy. But it had an incredibly limited print run, and the print run was really just not quite up to modern standards. And if this were to get a deluxe reprint, I wouldn't want to change the form factor at all. One thing that's actually kind of lousy about this is it has standees, but the way you do the standees is it has a card or a couple of cards where you're just supposed to take scissors and cut up the card and then fold them in half to get your little standees. In deluxifying it, I'd like to get some real standees, maybe. So maybe a slightly bigger box, but not much bigger, because this is a wonderful adventure game that fits in your pocket, takes up very little table space, and just works wonderfully. It's a great solo game, it's a great competitive game, and it really deserves to get some more love. I really hope somewhere down the road, Jack Darwood, the designer, publisher of this, is contacted by somebody and says, we want to give you all the monies so that we can make this hit a wider audience, because it deserves it. It's my number 2, Adventure of D, and my number 1 game that deserves a deluxe reprint. I'm about to show you its current deluxe reprint, Glory to Rome. So this is a game that came out, 12 or 13 years ago, and it had a very, very low rent production. I mean, literally, a lot of the cards in this game, this is a very rich, robust card game, were clip art that the developers had just found from various places and just kind of slapped together. The gameplay was phenomenal, and it is phenomenal. This is in my top 20 of all time, and Jen's too. I mean, this is an incredible game. This made my top 10 must-haves, that if I had to live on a desert island, this would be one of the games I'd want to have for the rest of my life. Absolutely adore this game to death. The original version, which I had, looked really ugly. We thought, whatever, we'll play it because it's just so good. We'll put aside the less. It came in a blister pack instead of an actual box, and the art was just an eyesore. So I was one of the first in line. This was actually one of the first modern board games, or board and card games, that got a project on Kickstarter, and it was a big, big success. Raised a lot of money. And kind of paved the way for what we have now, where, so many successful Kickstarter stories can be had. But unfortunately, what happened after the campaign was not successful. It went horribly wrong, and the little independent publisher of this basically ended up filing for bankruptcy. I think he lost a house. All kinds of stuff just went horribly wrong. Not everybody in the world who backed it, I think, ever got their copies. I'm very lucky to have mine. I'm sure I'm the only person in the entire country of Malta who actually has a copy of this. There are very few of them out there. And so, don't get me wrong, I am happy to have this. But here's the thing. If you go check out my run-through, you can see what it looks like. This is definitely leaps and bounds better than the original blister pack version of it. And it has a very kind of interesting, sparse, spare, Spartan aesthetic to its art that it's a cool look. It achieves what it was going for. But you know what? Like I said earlier, I forget what game I said it about. Oh, I said it about Nations. I would love this game to look as good as Elysium, or Lord of the Rings, the card game, or, these days, the bar has been raised so high, and there are so many gobsmackingly beautiful games out there, Seasons, and, I would love for this to get a deluxe reprint, completely revamping the art so that, I don't have to say, man, I'm really enjoying the game. And even though I think the art is good here, but I want the art to be transplendent because the gameplay is, and it deserves it. I can only hope somewhere, some way down the road, people will get the opportunity to republish this, because I know a lot of publishers over the ensuing years have tried to contact the the original publisher of this to get the rights to give it a big deluxe reprint that it deserves. And I don't know why, but it just never seems to happen. I can only hope someday it does. But in the meantime, I'm so happy to have my super ultra rare black box edition of Glory to Rome. And that was it, folks. Quick, with a bit of interruption there, list of 10 games that really deserved a deluxe treatment. Yeah, I'm really interested in that. I think I'll have to put that on the list for voters to choose. Top 10 games that deserve a 2.0 and top 10 games that deserve a retheme. Those would be cool subjects. But I would be so happy if all those, and man, if we ever someday get little robots that we can program to run around on our game, or holograms, how awesome would that be? But anyway, folks, that's it. Thanks for watching. Kind of a goofy little subject, but I had fun doing it. I had fun thinking about it. And I hope you have a very, very nice day. Talk to you later. So long. Bye-bye.